Well, good day to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Yvette Fielder. I'm a program manager with American Indian Enterprise Development. Today, we will be discussing Cloud 101, technology for a modern tribal business, brought to us by our friends at Arctic IT and presented by Mr. Dave Bailey, President and General Manager. We will also hear from Mr. Drew McElrath, Special Project Manager for the Mille Corporate Ventures, and will share his tribe's journey to the cloud and why it's so important for their organization to thrive. And we would like to welcome our Chairman of the Board of Directors for the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development, Mr. Derek Watchman. Derek will provide us with a welcome message. Derek?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Derek Watchman, Derek Watchman. I'm from Navajo, New Mexico originally, but I'm currently the chairman of the board for the National Center. My clans are Tsaskidney, and I am currently, as I said, the chairman of the board. I want to welcome everybody to this event here. You know, it's a sign of time here, but currently talking about the cloud, these things are very, very important. In the last 2 months, there's been, as we know, as today, a surge of using the internet and webinar, all those technologies, and so it's probably the new norm for many of us. And so from the National Center, one of our big focus areas is how do we keep up, how do we present information that is relevant to all of our users, all of our attendees, and all of our members. And so today's event, Cloud 101, I think is very, very important. You know, I consider myself somewhat technologically savvy. I use the cloud for many events. So I've experienced or loaded everything, like many of us, all of our information on a laptop, and then the laptop's gone. Guess what? You know, all your information is gone. And so, you know, I use things like the Apple Cloud, Dropbox, and so my little handheld devices are just basically a way for me to communicate, but you know, I have everything on the cloud. I'm also owner of my company, Sagebrush Hill Group LLC, and I do a lot of professional service, advisory service. And so I've been talking to different groups, and one of the things that they're telling me is that, you know, your system, your website has to be protected. And so, you know, for intruders and, you know, spam and those things. And so that's something that I need to think about myself. And so I'm sure many of the folks on the call here today are thinking about those same things. But to get somewhere, you know, we have to understand the basics of Cloud 101. So on behalf of the National Center and the board of directors, we certainly welcome everyone to this call, and we look forward to many more calls presenting information that we hope benefit everyone. So with that, I want to say Yvette and Chris, James, our president, CEO, and all the staff at the National Center. So we look forward to a very robust discussion today. So I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you, Yvette. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. So Dave, we just are so excited to hear from you. Let's jump right on in.
All right, go ahead and there we go, presenter, and let me know when you can see my screen. All right, very good. So we'll jump right in. Well, thank you very much. And as Derek said, you know, businesses have faced very unique challenges in the past few months. We've been talking with tribes about the cloud for, it's nearly 10 years now, believe it or not. But one of the things that we like to make sure people are aware of is that there are compliance, there are regulations, there are legal aspects of any technology that we use. And the cloud is merely an extension of the policies and compliance that we want to adhere to. So people look at it as an alternative. People look at it as a new frontier, depending on how much knowledge you have of the different types of cloud and really what it's defined as. So the goal of our presentation today, and I'm happy to have Drew from Mille Corporate Ventures with us, is to understand that it is not nearly as daunting as someone might assume. And we call this Cloud 101. This is really for the business professional, that tribal leader, anybody inside the tribal organization that's looking to understand more about what the benefits of the cloud are. And there's more than one type. So we're going to dive right in. So an analogy about cloud technology and kind of how we got there so that people can relate it to something. We'll dive into some definitions. We'll give you a real world example. And then we'll talk to you about how you move something from an on-premise technology that used to be like brick and mortar that we're used to, and how do we move something like that to the cloud, and what do we have to take into consideration? So this isn't a presentation for an IT professional, but your IT professional should be able to talk to your leadership and talk to your team in the same context that we are today in this presentation. And we'll talk about something called the modern workplace, which just had a big jump in evolution over the last 2 months, right? And we'll do a little Q&A. All right, so the cloud is not a destination, it's a capability. And that's really a different frame of mind. So we want to start right out of the gate and say the cloud is a capability. It allows you to take advantage of many different things than you can if you're in an on-premise brick and mortar environment, right? I had to explain to my father not so long ago that, Dad, the cloud's on the ground, right? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, it's not up there. It's just on the ground somewhere else. So you're really just taking your technology assets and relocating them to a larger economy of scale type facility and paying for it as a service, right? So let's dig into that a little bit. So hardware application and bandwidth costs are covered by that cloud provider out there. And what does that mean? Well, instead of buying hardware to put in my business, I can just pay for it as a service, and it's their responsibility to have new hardware, new power, new capability, all that stuff that I'm constantly trying to maintain inside my environment. I now have the ability to push that responsibility to someone else and pay for it as a service. It scales to my needs. So if I've unexpectedly had to shut down my casino for 2 months, 3 months, depending on where we are, if my resources were in the cloud, I could turn how much I needed way down, and my expenses and my utilization would go way down. I have that infrastructure in place, that money's already spent, I gotta keep paying for it, I gotta keep it alive, I gotta take care of it, and I have a whole bunch of unused stuff that I'm paying for no matter what. So that's the difference in scalability. Or more importantly, on a bright spot, everybody gets to come back outside and play now, and we're gonna be busy as heck in our casino. I need to turn up those resources because I have more than usual demand on my systems, and I want to just turn that up. Low maintenance. I don't have any moving parts to maintain. I'm paying for that. There's a service level agreement or an SLA with that cloud provider. So that puts me in a better position to use my cash, right? And I can defend against operational failure with fault tolerance and geo-redundancy. That might sound like some IT nerd speak, but let's just talk about what that is. Geo-redundancy. That means I'm going to put something in one cloud facility. That's where I'm going to pay for it. But they're offering me to back it up on the West Coast. So I'm talking to you from New York right now. I can have stuff in the data center out here and have it co-located and geo-redundant backup out on the West Coast. Why? Well, if we get a big flood or a hurricane out here on the East Coast and it takes down my data center, everything's just working at the same level over there. Parity, in other words, I have all my systems on that West Coast. Business stays operational. I'm a national organization. I can't just have all my eggs in one basket, right? So that I can't afford that kind of geolocation in an on-premise environment. It's very expensive to duplicate your infrastructure, right? And along the bottom here, you'll see this is electricity. So your home is all the way out there on the end. And then you have everything from a power plant to a wind farm to the antennas that bring the electricity, and then it's reduced down before it gets to our house into 220 or 110. But all we do right there at the house is just pay the bill. We don't have to deal with any of the stuff all the way off to the side. We just sit in the house and pay the bill. That's electricity as a service. So how do we get there? Well, years ago, not too long ago, if you read a book called The Tipping Point, very good book, they talk about electricity, and it was right here in actually New York State, Troy, New York, where you had a guy that had this generator inside his business, and he was buying fuel to run the generator, created steam, which ran an electric turbine to create electricity for everywhere in his shop. And that was the same for all the manufacturing facilities down the road. They all had their own generator, generating their own electricity, buying fuel, yada, yada, yada. One guy had such a large generator, he was making more electricity than he could use, and he couldn't store it. So he went to his neighbor and he said, hey, you want to use my electricity? I'll sell you what I have, and you don't have to get a generator, because he was starting up a new business. A year later, he had gotten rid of all of his manufacturing machinery, and he had 12 generators lined up in a room, just like you see that old-fashioned picture right there. The guy's name was Thomas Edison. Started selling electricity, and it became an electricity as a service. Everybody else down the block got rid of their generators, put more manufacturing space in, then they just paid the bill at the end of the month for how much electricity they consumed, right? Electricity as a service. So now you fast forward here a little bit quicker here, and we have the traditional server room up top in the corner here, right, versus the generator over there. And now I have all my eggs out there in the cloud. That's actually a picture of a Microsoft data center you see right there. So that is a series of server upon server upon server with virtual servers inside of them running millions and millions of transactions at speed, at storage, and at demand for less money than I'm able to spend in my own data center. So that's the economy of scale. So analogy, when you start thinking about the cloud, it's no different than technology or software as a service, and we'll talk about some of the different types of things, just the same way we switched to electricity as a service years ago. So there's different types of clouds. Just as you look up in the sky, there's gray clouds, white clouds, flat clouds, poofy clouds, right? We have a public cloud. Well, that means that many types of businesses are going to go up there and consume different compute power. We have a private cloud, which might be similar to like your casino properties your tribal government might have today. They have a data center, they have a whole bunch of racks in there. That's really their cloud environment, because the rest of the enterprise is coming into that data center to use your software and tools. So there's a private cloud. And then we have what's called hybrid, where I'm going to put some of my stuff out in the public cloud. I'm going to keep some of my stuff local, right? So I have a hybrid cloud. And then I might have what's called multi-cloud. I might have all three. An example of more than one cloud environment might be I use Office 365 and Microsoft technologies in the Microsoft cloud. And then I have some server resources and data resources over here in Amazon Web Services, or AWS. I might back up my Microsoft stuff to AWS. I might back up both of those things to my on-premise data center because I want to own my data. Very common when we start talking about sovereignty, right? So there's different types of cloud environments. Most tribal enterprises, tribal governments, most for-profits, even Arctic IT, will use a hybrid and multi-cloud approach. I don't want all my eggs in one basket, and I don't want to be 100% dependent with nothing on-premise, depending on my industry. So there's three different types of cloud environments out there that we talked, out there for you to procure. Most common is software as a service. So Office 365 is an example. If you've been doing this for a long time, you remember years ago, we would buy the disks, right? We'd get the Office 365 disk and we'd have to load it up and put in a key, and we'd have to install our software. And if we were able to use that same installed piece of software for 3 to 4, maybe 5 years, man, we thought we beat the man, right? We installed that software and it was great. The problem is that compatibility with the operating system and the other software packages we use, and now the security of those things became more and more difficult to commoditize. So Microsoft switched it to a subscription basis where you pay us one price per month or per year, depending on what your license agreement is. You're always going to have the latest and greatest software, and it's always updated with the latest security patches, features, and functions. Okay, that's definitely a better way to roll. Well, if I'm spending $99 a year, or depending on if you have tribal government pricing, tribal enterprise pricing, it's actually like $60, $70 a year. You're still spending the same money over 3 to 4 years, but you're not doing any installs and you're not worried about the compatibility. And in addition to that, you have a bunch of cloud capability where if I lose my laptop, as you heard Derek say, my documents and everything can be saved up there. My emails are going to be on my phone. It's going to be on my laptop. I don't have to worry about that because it's in the cloud, right? Whole new capability. So remember, it's not a destination. It enabled us a new capability. Then there's platform as a service and then infrastructure as a service. And those are a little different. Platform as a service might mean, hey, you know what? I have a large casino operation. I have a ton of player data. My IT department's been constantly coming in and asking me to put more and more storage because I got so much data. The problem is that eventually I got to say, hey, what are we doing with all this data and how valuable is it? And if you ask marketing, they're going to be like, man, it's really valuable. And you can't tell them it's not. You ask the business development side or the economic development side of what they're working on, they need all their data and everything. But now you're starting to take up space, and now you have to back up that storage in that data center, and now you have to make sure that it's encrypted and protected. God forbid you have ransomware attack, which is very common in Indian country right now. I want to stress that, very common. I can take all that data, put it up in the cloud environment, encrypt it and secure it, actually provide better, quicker, faster access to it, and cost me less money and make me more secure at the same time with a platform as a service. An example of that would be taking a database server in either AWS or Microsoft Azure and just putting my data there. I can run my query tools, I can run my business intelligence tools, my reporting over all that data. And I removed it from on-premise, I lowered my risk, I saved myself money, I created better accessibility to the data, and all I had to do was move it from one place to another. So the destination is the perception, but the capability that it provided you is much different. Infrastructure is a little bit more technical, if you will. That might be where I'm going to carve out a piece of someone's data center, and that's mine. I'm going to put a virtual network around it. I'm going to specify size, shape, dimension of the hardware that I want. And one, common 101 level knowledge piece of that might be something like a rack space, right? I want to take my servers out of my server room and I want to put them in another place. So those are really the three types of cloud services. You're one of those three, okay? So why do people move things to the cloud? From a leadership perspective, you need to be able to understand this. You don't have to be an IT professional, but if you work in a professional capacity in any type of business, no matter what business it is, you're constantly thinking about expense, how fast or what's the speed in which I can get something done, the utilization of my folks, right? If Yvette's working on something and it takes her 3 hours because she's manually entering data into 3 different things 3 different times, well, that's not efficient. She's not utilizing her time well, and technology can fix that. I'm not saying technology can fix everything, but it fixes a lot of things. We might be a little, jaded in that respect. But reliability. If I turn on my computer, I have problems, or I need to access a document and I don't have my laptop with me and I'm making a critical business decision, I want to be able to get to my stuff, right? Reliability, uptime, availability, accessibility, management, depending on demand. We talked about that, right? I don't want to pay so much because I'm not using as much. I have high demand. I want to turn it back up. Redundancy, being able to have my eggs spread around so I don't have continuing of operations. I have contingency. Think about it. Tribal governments were told, can't come in the office, have to work from home. Casino management, can't work here, you have to work from home. Well, how do I get to my information? We didn't have VPN access and all kinds of remote worker scenarios built into a lot of those use cases for those users. If they're in the cloud, it's no different whether they're working in the office or working from home. Now, you might argue some people are more productive in the office than they are at home, right? That's a real argument. I think people are finding new ways to be productive at home, right? So it really turns that on its head. And then security. I leave security for last. One of the most important criteria, and Drew will touch on this from Mille as well. Security is a moving target. there is no such thing as 100% secure. I have a master's in cybersecurity, and I completed that not quite a year ago. And the landscape in which I completed that master's program versus what it is today is 180 degrees. We are securing things differently. Instead of brick and mortar tools to watch the network and the perimeter, I'm moving stuff out into the cloud now with customers so that the security is kept up there. And we're focusing on end user security and training and locking down the workstation, zero trust models. It evolves so quick. If you think you can afford as a business, and if you think your IT staff in your current business can afford to keep up with all the security challenges and risks by just buying Legos and maintaining and monitoring all that stuff at scale, if you learn anything today, you are wrong. And it's not because they don't want to succeed. It's not because they don't want to keep your business secure. It's not feasible for them to have enough people and enough manpower and enough money and tools to protect from everything. The cloud allows you to get security at scale. So then you turn the conversation around to say, how secure is my information in that cloud? So now that's what we're going to evolve the conversation to now. So we're going to move on to say, okay, great, Dave, I can move some stuff up there. I get it, right? I can move some capability into my end user's hands, and I can move my stuff up. But how do I protect it up there? So let's dive in. So when we look at the span of business, where people are finding the most value in cloud, this is a pretty interesting. Our CIO, Phil Jackson, he presented this in his blog not too long ago. Software as a service remains clearly, as you can see from those numbers, one of the highest growth areas for people taking advantage of the cloud. You might think about just an app you download on your phone, right? You heard Derek mention he uses iCloud, for example, right? So I lose my iPhone. I go to the Apple store, they give me a new phone, I sync up with iCloud, almost everything's back on my phone. What does that mean? Well, you basically have phone as a service. Nobody's ever said it to you that way before, but you have phone as a service. That is an example of software as a service, because the device itself, now you just pay for it on a monthly basis. They tell you that there's no contract, but you got to pay for that phone. So there's still a contract, by the way. It's a little bit of they kind of jip you there. But all your information is really not on your phone. It's stored in a cloud environment. So if you lose the phone or there's a security breach, your information is protected. And if your phone's not set up like that, talk to your IT professional, because that's a bad way to run, right? So phone as a service is really what you have. Cloud applications are the business application. Software as a service, the number one thing. Accounting software, cloud-based. My CRM software, cloud-based. Why? Because my player development reps on my casino or my tribal government services, whether it's a social services program, housing services. I want to go out and visit the tribal community and let them know that they need to take advantage and sign up for the energy assistance program this year. I can go out there with a phone connected device, all my encrypted information, sign them up for the program. They can sign right in the bottom of the phone using software as a service, more secure, put the technology in the hands of the people that are interacting with the community, right? That's just an example of how software as a service makes it into Indian country right now as we speak. Everything can be a service. I don't know, some of us might be old enough to remember some of the Rube Goldberg type stuff that you saw out there. This is one of his drawings. I mean, this is a napkin. This is an automated napkin as a service. You can have any type of service out there, right? It's not hard. So cloud migration might seem complicated. So if you're not an IT professional and you really don't understand a lot about the moving parts of technology, what does it take to move that stuff up? So we offer this just as a little bit of a guidance for you to say, okay, we consider cloud migration in 9 steps. Step 1, discover a customer's on-premise footprint, map the dependencies of what software and technology they use to run their business, make a picture. We use the Rube Goldberg analogy and we use this diagram because a picture is worth 1,000 words. Where am I in the process of determining whether or not I can pick this up off the ground and move it to the cloud? What business value does it have? So once we establish that, let's recommend the optimization path. Maybe it's a Microsoft software as a service. Maybe we're going to go into platform as a service for database because we want to get rid of all this storage on the ground. Once we make all those determinations, we come up with a cloud migration strategy. We prepare the environment. We do an initial test migration, make sure everything's cool. We test out the security. The end users are going to test to make sure they have access to what they need. For example, if you move email up to the cloud, your end user shouldn't even know anything happened. They shouldn't even know. They should just come in Monday morning and it's like, yeah, I'm using email. What happened? I didn't feel anything. That's how it should go, right? We make sure at step 8, we make sure that we conduct a quality assessment, make sure security is all in check. We document that and we get the maintenance schedule. Now that doesn't mean your IT professionals now they have nothing to do. They're now going to focus their attention on the quality and security of the service as it comes into your organization versus the nuts and bolts pieces of keeping the servers running, the patches and everything else that they had to do before they moved it. The IT professional is just as valuable after you move to the cloud as before. It's just you made them strategic instead of operationally tactical. You've really just changed the focus for them, okay? So a real world example. So we mentioned early on that we have Drew McElrath from our friends at the Mille Corporate Ventures. We've worked for them for a number of years, know a lot about their enterprises. And as an introduction, when we first engaged with Drew and his leadership there, they realized that their business was growing in diversity. So they had their hospitality business, their casino, golf course. They had several other things that they were involved in, but they also diversified into some hotels and some other commercial entities that were non-gaming organizations or NGOs. So as you looked at their business from an economic development perspective, not all of the businesses fit in the IT security framework for casino or the gaming commission compliance requirements, right? So then the conversation evolved to, do we need a corporate overall strategy so that the casino and compliance and the gaming commission can have what they need, but can we be as efficient as we need to be on that same infrastructure? So the cloud became a really interesting conversation because, like many casino properties and tribal properties we work with, the casino had most of the dollars, so they typically had best technology. And we're going to start putting stuff into their infrastructure because it's the best option we have. The cloud itself, though, created another opportunity. So Drew, just as a question to start things off, tell us a little bit about the decision process and how you evaluated the cloud as you looked at your options.
Sure, thanks, Dave. So we really were in a situation where we have 2 casinos in Minnesota. A lot of those additional business opportunities that you talked about were local to the casino areas. And, as we purchased another gas station, another Taco John's, that infrastructure and the support for that infrastructure, more importantly, was coming from the same IT group that served the casinos. Even so much as a lot of the connections to the internet and stuff flowed through the casinos. And it started to become, a business issue for us to say, well, these people are really living off of, the services that the casinos are paying for. And you could look at chargeback models and stuff, but we're really commingling purposes. And not only that, as we started to really diversify and purchase some of these larger assets, like the hotels in the Twin Cities, we started to say, well, we really want to be a management company and take care of all of our businesses and serve all of our businesses' needs. And being kind of locked inside that regulatory environment of the casino didn't serve us for being able to work what we ended up coining how we want, where we want as a management organization. And so that's how we started to look towards opportunities in the cloud.
Very good. So as we engaged, you had shared that story with us. We talked about the cloud. Now there's something that Arctic IT provides where we do what's called cloud managed services, where some of the organizations we work with, they don't have the knowledge of the cloud and how to procure. More importantly, they might not have a robust IT staff. So moving to the cloud lets them operate nice and lean, but they hire a firm like ours to do some of the daily support, security monitoring, that type of stuff, just so that they don't have to operationally work on that. Now, that creates a cost advantage for them, because ideally it should be less expensive to outsource that than it would be to have it internally, right? But one of the other things is that as you got into those cloud services, you started to realize, hey, there's a whole lot more we could do here. Communication, phone, collaboration, storage, security. Talk a little bit about some of those discoveries from a capability perspective.
Yeah, so as we started to take a look with your team and with our Microsoft reps at what the Microsoft Cloud could do for us, we really got sold into Teams. We decided to go with a Teams first approach, and in that we wanted to get all of the bells and whistles up and running. I think that we even went to the cloud voice, and that's been really powerful for our team. Now you're not even tied to your desk to get your phone calls, right? So I have my work number rings right on my cell phone through Teams. It obeys my presence. So if I'm out of the office or I mark myself as busy in Teams, then it just goes directly to my voicemail. But being able to handle not just the collaboration between ourselves as a corporate team, but still be able to collaborate with all of our business partners, not just through email, but through voicemail, through video chat, through the native team sharing like we're kind of doing here on WebEx. We just put all that power right in the hands of every single one of our corporate people. They all have a Teams phone number. They all have the conference calling capability attached to their teams. So any one of us can spin up and start collaborating at any moment.
And then, before you got into this, you were obviously concerned about security. It was a big issue for anybody. What has moving to the cloud allow you to focus on because of the security posture that you've enabled yourself? I mean, how do you view your security posture today as a result of this?
Well, like you said, security is never done, and we take that to heart. We're always taking a look at what features are being released. In the Microsoft 365 environment, they have great analysis tools built right in. So you have your security score. The AI is always making recommendations about what we can do next, and we're always taking those recommendations into consideration. So every layer of security that we can add that protects us more without adding hurdles to us to do business is just a win-win.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you, Drew. So one of the things that is great for us to have Drew on for is that as we've evolved that cloud conversation with different tribal organizations, and I've had a discussion about the Microsoft Cloud with an 84-year-old council member. Right, so you can imagine that was a tough conversation to get started, but by the end, I think I won about, well, this is my information. I don't want to take it and put it there, and it goes to the sovereignty question. But if you remember the analogy I gave you earlier, where I have a whole bunch of data here that I have to protect on premise in my current tribal data center, if you will, and now I'm going to consider moving it to the cloud. Because I can't touch it, the perception is that I can't secure it and I can't protect it. And I'm worried about who might see it or take it or do something with it. So the concern isn't different in the cloud. You would still be concerned about that up there and concerned about that down here. The challenge is you don't feel like you can touch it. The reality is for that board member, though, and for any board member and anybody in the tribal space that's concerned about sovereignty, is, believe it or not, when you move that data, you have the ability today to actually make it more secure, and I would argue more sovereign, in that third-party cloud because of the following. You have the ability to encrypt it and bring your own key. So for example, if you go up into Microsoft's environment and you want to say, I want to put my own encryption on it, and the only way to decrypt it or get that data is if I have this key and I put it into the computer and I pull that key in to uncrypt the data or decrypt the data. So that's a bring your own key capability that Microsoft allows its customers. You also, as a tribal enterprise and or tribal government, have the ability to put your information in the Microsoft Government Community Cloud, which has a few additional layers of security over the commercial cloud. Okay, so there's lots of different interesting opportunity that's evolved into that cloud discussion. And with the rise in ransomware and the on-premise security challenges that any tribe has, it really is an important consideration. Even if you want to have your main data in your own data center, your day-to-day operational data, you should at least back your information up in the cloud. And one of the key aspects of that I remember in working with Drew and his team a few years back was the casino was mostly worried about the compliance with the Gaming Commission. So one key thing, and I applaud the Mille folks for how they navigated this, they said, listen, compliance has to evolve the same way technology does. You have a gaming commission with these compliance standards that doesn't apply to the world as we know it today with technology, and they worked really collectively with the Gaming Commission and the casino to establish and evolve what that compliance needs to be, what's allowed, what do we understand, and really start to engage that conversation. So I think one thing I want to make sure everybody on the call has is that it's okay if your gaming commission and your casino and your IT folks, if they weren't coming at you saying no cloud, right? If they weren't and they were just like, yeah, do whatever you want, well, we should all be worried. The fact that they're concerned about it doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make them argumentative. You're supposed to professionally argue about why or why not. So if you go back to that 9-step process, let's assess what we have. Why is it a candidate to move to the cloud? What is the security that we'll gain or lose that we perceive here? And what's the risk of not doing something with this information? That's step one, right? So at a minimum, get into that conversation. You don't have to be an IT professional to go to your leadership or go to your IT staff and say, what are we doing with the cloud and how are we preparing for the next time something like what we're in right now happens to us? All sources point to the fact that the world will react again, like what we've seen over the past few months, to something else that comes up in the future. It is likely because this is now a precedent. We started out by defending the fact that we don't know how to navigate this because it was unprecedented. Well, guess what it is now? It's precedented, right? So if we're not prepared to have stuff up that we can dial down, trim costs and secure and work remotely, the next time something like this hits us because the Gaming Commission or Tribal Council didn't understand the value of the cloud, at Arctic IT, we would consider that a very big failure. In other words, we didn't get the message out, we didn't share that knowledge, and we didn't help people navigate that. We're tribally owned as well, right? So we understand that. So if you need help having that conversation, Drew clearly has some really good, street cred within his organization. He's had some of those tough conversations with his leadership as well. And then of course at Arctic IT with all the tribes we work with, we've seen the different iterations and challenges that might go on, right? So I'm gonna breeze through some more of this. The deck is available to attendees if they want to see this. I'm just going to go through the steps with a few other pictures so you understand what we're talking about. So I really want to make sure you understand this is how we move something to the cloud. Step one, what's going on? What's the business impact if we don't move? What's the impact if we do? What's the cost? Is it more expensive, less expensive? How do we navigate that? Get some documentation. How many people at the leadership table have a documentation of the IT resources and why we use them and how much they cost the business, right? Start having that conversation. Your IT leader, your IT director, your CIO, whoever you have in your organization, whether it's a government or a casino or an enterprise, you as a leader or you as, maybe you're not on the leadership team, maybe you're just using technology out there as a daily driver, doing your job at the tribe, if you can't go to IT and ask them what's the strategy, that's a bad organizational policy. In other words, your IT leader is typically going to be super excited that you came to them and said, hey, I want to have a discussion about the cloud. Think about it. Why do we usually call up IT? Because something's broken, it ain't working, right? No one ever stops by the IT department and swings in and just says, hey guys, I just wanted you to know everything is working great today. Just working great. No one ever says that to us, right? But if it's not working good, man, you let us know. But if you stop in and you say, I want to talk about the cloud, I guarantee you it will change the way technology works for you in that company. I promise you that. All right, so map dependencies. Some things I can't move to the cloud. Why? Well, maybe in my health clinic, they need their systems. They need their charting. They need to have all that information there. And if the internet's crappy out on the res, right? Mr. Watchman, he's out there from Navajo. There's parts out there in that res that I don't even think they have broadband yet, which is horrible, right? So there's places there where they need some on-premise technology, but they at least have to be able to back it up to the cloud so they have some fault tolerance and redundancy in case they lose something or it comes compromised by a security incident. So figure out what the dependencies are. Health clinic might need to keep some stuff on premise. The casino needs to keep people entertained if they lose internet, right? So how do you map the dependencies there? Picture's worth 1,000 words, right? Okay, now we've figured out what we want to move. Believe it or not, the same way you go on Amazon and you buy a pair of shoes or you buy anything to get shipped to your house because you don't want to go to the store, you drop down, you pick your color, you pick your selection, whatever you got to do, and boom, it's there. It used to get there a little quicker. Right now, things are kind of slow, but you get the point. Do you know that that's how you buy stuff in the cloud? You go up, you hit a drop down, you put in your credit card, you have it. It's operational. Now to move the data that you have up there, that's where it gets a little bit more complicated. You want your IT professional to help you. So we're going to pick that type of service, infrastructure, software, platform. What do we want? We're going to figure out how much data. Look at this. For $20 a month right now, you get the entire Microsoft Office suite, your hosted email, everything. They give you a terabyte of storage in the cloud per user. That's 1,000 gigs. Your IT department, if you have 1,000 employees, they don't have that much storage for all you, I guarantee it. So you just get it. Storage is not, nobody worries about storage in the cloud. It's infinite, right? Prepare the environment. Next, we're going to stand up some servers. This is just a screenshot to show you that I get to pick how many disks I want in my cloud service. I get to pick how much memory I want, how much processing capability. This is still 101, right? How fast do I need that cloud service to operate? How fast do I want it to work? I get to pick my flavor and I'm up. Sprinkles, chocolate, flavor ice cream, everything. I get to pick it all right there. And once I'm up there, I have a user account. Hopefully, most of you are using what's called multi-factor authentication. Have you logged into your bank to your credit card and it sends you a code and you have to approve so you can log in? Think about being able to secure all of your corporation or your tribal government's data by making sure that no one can have a compromised user account. That's the #1 way that people's information is stolen or compromised because of privilege escalation inside the environment. Multi-factor authentication and a user identity inside the cloud means that anybody trying to break into you would have to go through that and get through all that security, multi-factor authentication before they got to your stuff. Very different way to look at security, right? We launched the rocket, we moved to production, everybody high fives, all systems go. You've tested it, you've figured out a way to say that it wouldn't work, but you lost, it's working, you're moving, right? And then we go back and we do a quality assessment. What's our security score? Where's the risk? The cloud can look at all kinds of things at the same time and tell us where we have risk. Document and schedule that maintenance. That's step 9. So it's kind of like rinse and repeat. Just because we moved it, it's not like a crock pot where we set it and forget it. Now we have to have a schedule where we're going to go out there every Tuesday morning, take a look at any alerts that were fired off. If anything's severe, it would have messaged the IT administrator or your service provider, like someone like Arctic IT or someone in Drew's position at the tribe, right? So we have to have a frequency to go in there and maintain stuff. Don't just assume that it's all tightened up, right? And that's just one more picture for a refresher, okay? 9 steps, figure out where you are in that process, and you don't have to move something big. If your tribal organization is not really cloud invested quite yet, take something small and follow the 9 steps and walk it through and move it. And use that as a benchmark to take maybe bigger chunks. Again, we're preparing for a new way to work as we evolve out of what we've just all kind of gone through, right? So have that conversation sooner rather than later. So we've talked about business applications, and I want to make sure with the, I guess about the 10 minutes or so that we have left, is that there are business applications, software as a service. We've talked about Microsoft 365. That's Windows 10, Office 365, some security tools, mobile device management and security all baked in. So if I need my documents in mail here, if I lose my phone, IT can go into the cloud, wipe the data off the phone. Done. Very simple. That's Microsoft 365. Always have the latest operating system, always have the latest Office applications. I don't have to worry about that stuff. Then you have Dynamics 365. ERP, accounting software, CRM software, for example. We build stuff for tribes at Arctic IT. We build like a tribal enrollment solution. We build a family wellness solution. We build a housing capability solution, all in that Dynamics platform. So we're using Microsoft's cloud, storing the data there. The interface is all web-based. I can use it on my phone, a PC, a tablet. I'm able to embed security in it. And I can extend that technology out to the community. I could take a mobile app and push it out there and say, hey, if you're in that tribal community as a member or a family member, and you want to request some information, set up a visit, have some information sent to you, you can do that all right from a mobile device. That's a business application in the cloud, right? And then you have Azure. That's where your IT department is going to say, I want to move some of my on-premise infrastructure into a cloud-based data center, get rid of some of these moving parts. No longer a capital expenditure, it becomes a service, right? It becomes a service, an operating expense. Very big difference. So after we move stuff into the cloud, now at Arctic IT, we're specifically a Microsoft shop. That's where we focus most of our activity. From a productivity and a modern workplace, we've gone out of the Microsoft community over the years. There's no better value, specifically for how they price stuff for Indian country as well. There's no better value in the tools and services and technology that Microsoft provides. That's what we focus. It's not the only option. There's AWS. But if you want to go into Amazon, you still have to buy Microsoft licenses to run on your stuff, right? It's kind of a catch-22 there. There's Google, there's the G Suite, right? That's one option for some office productivity type stuff. My kids all use that in school, right? They're all using the hell out of it right now, as you might imagine. But that modern workplace, the ability, as you heard Drew say, he said they decided to use something called Teams. Teams is not just a meeting technology, it's my documents, it's my collaboration content, the stuff that I'm working on with my coworkers, it's my chat, it's my phone, it's everything. All baked into one Office suite with one user, built to work on an iPad, a Mac, a Windows PC, it'll work anywhere. So anywhere, anytime, any device is a really big deal for that new agile contingency planning workplace. That's really what we're saying. Ultimately, cloud helps us save time, money, and resources, and it helps us work smarter. It helps us work smarter. The same way electricity evolved so many years ago is the same way your consumption of technology needs to evolve today. We work with tribes all throughout the US. We have 72 different tribal organizations that we work with. And just in good Indian country fashion, it's no tribe does anything the same way. They don't. They have different cultural values. They have different socioeconomic conditions that they deal with. You might not know this, Yvette, but we do a lot of work with MHA, right? We're out there quite a bit. We're in the industry side, we're in the tribal side, so many different aspects of a business that make it unique. So if you have questions about how to have this conversation, or you want to know more about the cloud, we don't just know more about it from a technology perspective, but we know more about it from a tribal perspective. We understand business decisions are not just made about the money or the business impact. It's made with culture and politics and future. Business decisions and technology decisions are made on a different decision table in Indian country, and we accept that, right? We understand that. We help navigate that. If you have those questions, we're offering any conversation that you want to have with our IT professionals. We'll have that with you, a 2-hour meeting, give you the information that you need, set you up for success. Feel free to reach out at connect@ardicit.com. And then I'd like to open it up for some questions.
Well, thank you so much. I've learned a lot, and I really like some of what I have a takeaway here of the new capability, less money, lower risks, and better accessibility. So thank you so much. We do have a question here, and that is, how do you deal with sovereignty and EULAs? And it's EULAS. This has been a sovereignty issue many have struggled with.
Yep, the end user, so the EULA, the end user license agreement, right? So that's, so when you go into the Microsoft environment, who owns my data, who has access to it, and the question of sovereignty, right? Sovereignty is not, it's not transferable. I can't say that something is sovereign physically here and then move it over here outside of that boundary and say that it's sovereign. So when you talk about data, data sovereignty, believe it or not, and this is a good thing, data sovereignty is not just a tribal issue. Matter of fact, the word sovereignty is not something that most people in our country even understand. They don't understand what it means. If you're from a tribe, you do, but if you're not, you don't have a good understanding of that. But as a consumer, tribal or not, your data has value. And as an individual, the sovereignty of your information, that privacy setting inside your phone or in your web browser, that's part of that end user license agreement. So what most tribes struggle with is, I'm giving up control over my information. But as a tribal government or a tribal agency, the ironic thing is that as individuals who use their phones and their devices, as an individual, they've given up a lot more. So sovereignty as an individual, believe it or not, is starting to become something that's at or about parity with the tribal sovereignty discussion. And that capability you heard me talk about earlier of bringing your own key, so locking up your data with your own encryption. That is the new way that tribes are able to get around, hey, I want to make sure I have access to my information whenever I want it. Do you know you can back up your data from the cloud to your on-premise facility so you have it whenever you want it, so it can't be held hostage? That's another thing that tribes will say, hey, if I want my data, I want to be able to get it whenever I want. The end user license agreement isn't always clear about how you get your data back, right? There's lots of different things that we can help you navigate. So we're experts in dealing with that conversation and working through it. But you got to remember, as a consumer, you have already dealt with some of those sovereignty issues for your own personal data. And I think when you start to relate the two, you start to see the forest through the trees.
Yes. We do have a question here for Drew as well, and that is, how did you navigate the conversation around moving your assets to the cloud and breaking away from your casino operations with the Gaming Commission?
Sure. So Dave touched on some of these points already, but the very first thing is to get on the same team, right? You both want your data protected. You both want your systems protected. Neither you nor your Gaming Commission wants there to be any sort of security incident and God forbid, a security breach, right? So get on the same team, let them know that you're working with them to figure out how we can protect our data, but still use these new capabilities. The second, and Dave did a good job of this, is demystify the cloud, right? It's scary. And so we need to understand what these different cloud assets are and where they are. It's very powerful to put up a picture of a data center and say, look, we have data in this North American Microsoft data center, and there it is. It's in there somewhere, right? But no engineer, no technician, nobody that works at that facility can go pull the drive and say, aha, I have your data. You know, that stuff's all moved around for the sake of high availability and access and speed. So nobody can actually, you know, grab your data physically out of there. The third point is that give them all the information that you can. A lot of these services already have and already beholden to all sorts of security standards and publish monthly, quarterly, yearly reports for their compliance. So they're doing the things that our regulatory agency wants to see, which is outside, you know, verified testing. And then they publish those reports. So give them those reports. Let them see what they're doing to protect the data. And last but not least, no matter what standard your organization might hold you to, adopt the idea that you're going to maintain a set of security standards and practices that you expect from any vendor that you might engage with, whether it be in a public cloud, private cloud scenario, and then you know, share that with them and collaborate with them on that on an annual basis so that they have an idea about the framework that you're looking for them to adhere to.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No, we don't have any other questions, but we do have Chris James, the president and CEO of the National Center. So Chris?
Drew and Dave, thank you, and Arctic IT. We really appreciate your supporting this Native Edge Institute. I know that Arctic IT's had a great relationship with the National Center for many years, and we really appreciate your support, not only helping us with our technology training, but also doing webinars like today. So we really appreciate that. I think there is a closing survey that'll come up when folks log out. So we'll have that as soon as this is over. I also want to thank all of our supporters here with our Native Edge Institute. This is in part supported by the Minority Business Development Agency and our program manager for our MBDA team, Yvette Fielder. I want to thank her and what a great job of helping moderate this event. We also have support from the UPS Foundation, KeyBank Foundation, and Wells Fargo Foundation for our Native Edge Institute. So we really appreciate all the support. And our next webinar will be May 29th. So we will be working on the web and developing a sales platform for your business. So we'll be promoting that soon, and we hope all of you join us. We really appreciate your support of the National Center, and we look forward to us doing additional webinars in the future. Have a great afternoon, be safe, and have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care. Be safe.